Welcome to this month's episode of the World of Roofing podcast, hosted by John Kenny of Cottney Consulting and Andrew Rowley of roofmapping.com, where we will introduce you to a new roofing industry artisan from around the world.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of World in Roofing. So this one is special in a lot of ways. My co-host Andrew is actually over here in the USA from Great Britain. He's over here on vacation or holiday, as they say over there. So he's here in my office here in Plant City, Florida, and we're doing this together. That's why you see us both in the same camera. So, Andrew, how are you?
Absolutely very good, thank you, John.
Oh, good. It's great to have you here live.
It is. It's great to see you in person.
This is one of the few we didn't have to worry about the 6-hour time change to get it all coordinated. And then today we have a really special guest. I've known John. We have John Chan with Durable Slate. I've known John for quite a few years, but recently only had the honor to meet him in person about 2 years ago now, I guess, or a year ago. And amazing person, amazing company, and a truly amazing story. So if you really don't know John and what Durable Slate does, you will know once this podcast is over. John, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Just really busy, but doing fantastic. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out. I know you are very busy. Anybody who does follow John on Facebook or social media, he's traveling almost every single day somewhere. He's kind of he's what I use as my travel guide. If there's anywhere I haven't seen, I follow John around. So John, can kick it over here for you. So as you know, what we do on here is we like to spotlight and highlight somebody in the industry every month that is really of that high craftsman and promotional of our industry, and you fall into all categories. So why don't you go ahead and start out by telling us, about yourself and your experiences.
Okay, well, I started this job doing slate roofing as a summer job when I was in college. So I went to UCLA and I go back to Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm from and where I was born, to basically labor and, haul slate, cut slate, all that every summer. And when I finished school, I was thinking, wow, this is actually a really cool job and a really cool possibility for expansion. So after college, I took a full-time job and became a partner in the company. And, at that time, we had like about 4 or 5 people. And now we've got 120 guys, and we work all over the U.S. And we've even done projects abroad. We've worked in Peru. We did the Red House, which is the House of Parliament in Trinidad. So, yeah, some really interesting projects along the way.
So I do have to ask you a question about this, and you can tell us about some of your greatest challenges, which will fall in. But is there ever been a project you haven't taken on? Because you do take on, as a company, you really do some beautiful, challenging work that I think most people would either run away from because they're not experienced, which they should, or if they do attempt to do it, it's probably one that would put them out of business. Is that a fair assessment of some of the more difficult ones that you've done?
Well, we actually really like the super challenging projects for many reasons. Number one is that, just like anybody, when you get something done that's really tough, at the end of it, you feel like $1 million. Like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And especially some of the skill or some of the aesthetics of the roof after it's done, it really makes you proud. So yeah, we love those super challenging projects.
Yeah, no, that's great. Andrew, any particular questions yet, or?
Oh yeah, no,
good. Okay, all right. I don't want to be, you're here live. I don't want to be taking the whole stage here. So John, I do have to ask this. We know labor in the industry is very challenging nowadays, and it's actually probably not getting any better, if not worse, than it's been over the last 30 years. It's not something that's really happened overnight. A lot of people like to think that, but it's been shrinking and shrinking. But you are very specialized, and I know I saw a video of somebody had specialized sheet metal work, and you've got specialized slate work and tile, all the things we talked about challenging. How do you handle once you say, let's just say you've got them onboarded and they're in your company? how do you handle the training, and how long does it really take before they be considered a craftsman in your company?
That's an answer that can't be really defined in actual time. The reason is that what we do in our company varies. I mean, we can have a small little slate repair job where, you know, somebody is going out to do 10 slates, and then we can have, you know, very complex steeples or domes that have very decorative copper all over it. So what it takes to train a person is very different from one person to another, meaning that some people, all they'll ever do is a basic slate repair, and they'll do them all day long, and sometimes they get very fast at it. And so that can take a very short amount of time. Somebody that does more of the artistic work, say as, you know, some of the ornamental copper or something like that, it's kind of like, how long does it take to train an artist? So some people have unique abilities where they will pick it up literally in weeks, because that's just how they operate. That's how they think. They see things in 3 dimensions. And, you know, I remember somebody asking me about that once. We were looking at blueprints. I said, yeah, your blueprints are wrong. And the architect got really offended, and he goes, no, it's right. And I showed him on his prints why it was wrong, and he got really red-faced. And after he left, the general contractor said, how did you know that? I said, well, I have a really unique ability in seeing things in 3 dimensions. So if I look at blueprints, I kind of see how the building is going to look. And if it doesn't match up, I automatically know that some dimensions are off. And when you train guys that do very decorative ornamental work, a lot of times they see in 3 dimensions. So that's one of the funny things. I can see in 3 dimensions, but I'm not one of these guys that are like these decorative ornamental guys that you see in some of our work. Yeah. I just estimate it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you got to have you have to have the ability to estimate it by seeing how it's going to look in the field. I know when I teach my estimating classes, that's exactly what I talk to them about, is you have to visualize that project of how it's going to go together and how it's going to look, because you can't really price it unless you can understand, you know, what the end looks like. So I guess my other question on that is with your folks there, I would have to assume there's got to be different levels of competitive pride, let's say, throughout your team, right? And I mean, you do have some amazing craftsmen. Now, when I started in the industry a long time ago, Northeast, I did slate. We had to learn everything. So really, to be considered a journeyman roofer back in the late 70s and that early 80s, you had to learn everything. You weren't just a single ply person or a hot person. So, but you've carried that on. Right now, I would say probably, I'm going to put a stab out there, probably definitely less than 10%, if not less than 5% of our industry seriously has the craftsmanship ability to do some of that detail work. So there has to be a certain amount of, I'm talking about in the USA, there has to be a certain amount of pride that goes along with that, I would assume. And I'm sure they must brag a little bit too, and rightfully so, to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, and the projects that we do, a lot of them are so unique that, sometimes it's, for some companies, it might be a once in a lifetime or never in a lifetime roof. Whereas our guys, they're used to doing some of that type of work time and time again. And well, I was talking to another roofer once who he was saying something about how proud he was because about 10 years ago, he actually was one of the finalists for the Gold Circle Award. And I said, oh, wow, that's fantastic. And, I kind of walked away from that because I didn't want to say anything more. But, a lot of people are so ecstatic on just being a finalist for the Gold Circle. But, we've won it, 5-6 times and been a runner-up a couple other times. And we're one of our projects, we won the IFD, which is the International Federation.
Yep.
project of the year, and we're the only American company who's ever won that award. So if you go over to Europe and you see some of those amazing castles and churches like Notre Dame and whatnot, we feel very privileged to have been able to do a project of that caliber and also to win that international award.
Yeah, and if anyone who doesn't know the International Federation of the Roofing Trades, which is the IFD, I work with them as well. And Andrew's, coming from Great Britain, he knows a lot about them and works with a lot of folks in there. That's saying something because they do not ever just give an award out. They are very stringent and everything's got to be just right. So for you being an American company to be honored with that award, I want everybody listening to realize it's not just like getting an award. That is like you're really being recognized for top of your field.
Yeah, and we really enjoyed that because it was 1996. We decided to go over and we went to Cologne, Germany, or Köln, as the Germans say, for their roof and wall shows, the Dachenwand. And, we saw the competition and we saw the roofs and we're thinking, oh my gosh, we're so far behind. We've got to get up to that kind of level. And, we looked into all the different types of machinery and everything that they were using. And we went and bought a Booker machine, or as the Americans say, Bacher. But that's basically how do you describe it? It's kind of like a ladder vader on steroids. So our Booker machine will take 660 pounds up and down 138 feet. So we can actually load something very, very tall and get all the trash off without damaging the property. But yeah, I think that part of our success is always looking to see what others have done. How did they do it? What tools or techniques did they use? What's different? And if you always kind of look ahead like that, then you can start doing some very interesting projects.
So what would you say is your most challenging either project or moment throughout your career in the roofing industry? And by saying that, why was it and how did you overcome that? And it could be a project. It could be a very tough project, and why. Just, I know you have to have them. I know there's probably been more than one. It's probably hard to pick one, but we'll let you go ahead and see what you think, is your most challenging time over your career.
Gosh, there's so many of them. I would say our first super challenging project was our first steeple, which was St. Mary's in Columbus, Ohio. It was a 175-foot steeple. And, slates and sheet metal parts were falling off the steeple when they had a school there. So we had to figure out what's the best slate to use, how to make sure that slate doesn't fall, make sure that the copper doesn't come off. And, that was back in 1995, I want to say. So that's been, 27 years. And, it looks perfect. I was just by there a couple months ago when I was in Columbus, and it looks perfect. So that was a super challenging job. Then you've got other jobs like we did a pagoda in Pennington, New Jersey. Somebody had imported a pagoda over from China, and it was reassembled here in the U.S. Well, Hurricane Sandy had damaged it, and they wanted to put the exact same roof on and repair it. And everybody looked at the guy like, you're crazy. It's like, that this can't be done. And so they did find a U.S. manufacturer willing to make that tile, but it wasn't going to look authentic. So the insurance company actually called me and said, hey, what do you think about that? And I said, I could probably match it. And they're like, you can match that tile? I said, oh, absolutely. So, I contacted a friend who imported things from China, and I researched and I found the exact tile manufacturing company that's been around since, I think, 1100.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. And we imported all of the tile in, and, the the hips, the hip starters had these dragon heads on it, and it was really cool. So we just love interesting and challenging projects. The job in Lima, Peru, they actually wanted to bring us down and train their guys on how to do slate and sheet metal work, because they had this big slate and sheet metal project. And we went down, and, of course, nobody spoke English. So we had to do all of our training through a translator. And so that was really, really interesting also. But we have some really super interesting projects all over. We're doing a copper dome right now in Lincoln, Illinois. It's the Logan County Courthouse, and that has some really super decorative copper work. And that's probably along the lines of an award-winning project when we finish. So
sure.
We love doing those super challenging projects like that.
No, that's great. Let me ask you another question. So if you could have a magic wand, right, in the roofing industry today, and what would you change? What would you change as far as not so much in the industry itself, but to make it more appealing to get people to come into the industry? What would you think? Speaking to a young person, I mean, I know I don't look young, but we'll pretend I'm a young person right now, and I'm just coming at it, deciding what to do. How would you do it?
Well, I think the whole thing of it is that the roofing trade has to show that it's a viable option for people, and that it's also a two-way street. And that goes for all employers. I was saying earlier, somebody was scoffing at, the amount of times that I put out there that we need guys. And they're thinking, well, that's probably why you can't retain guys. And I was thinking, no, we retain guys fine. And, as I was saying, of our 100, roughly 20 people on payroll, we've got 5 guys that are over 30 years and 15 that are 20 years or more. So we've retained a lot of people, and how we've done that is by making it a very two-way street of, when employees bend over backwards for you, you also bend over backwards for them. Mm-hmm. And it's that common goal of doing those amazing projects and supporting your employees and their endeavors and whatnot, and them, being really gung-ho and wanting to help to create beautiful artistic roofing work, all over the U.S. So I think that a lot of people, and why roofing in general isn't like a sought after trade, is that it's not portrayed as a viable option, meaning that it's a dirty job, it's a job that isn't that well paid, and all these problems. It's like it's a dangerous job. But if you lay it all out, meaning that if you train your guys well, and if you put in all the safety measures that are necessary, and you work with your employees and get them to understand exactly what they're doing, so that when they achieve their product, they're really proud of themselves. Mm-hmm. And that carries on forward. And I think that if companies really pushed that scenario out there, it would be much easier to recruit young roofing people, or young people to come into roofing. But I think that a lot of times it's portrayed improperly. Like, it's very hot, it's very cold, and it's basically like piecemeal pay, and you're only going to be as good as what you just did for me. Like, there's no reciprocation, there's no giving back to the employee. But if we as an industry do that, if we get our training in, and we acknowledge all of our great people, and we pay them, and we make sure that they see these great achievements that they're doing, I think it'd be much, much easier to recruit in the roofing industry.
No, that's very well put, John. And definitely, I think a positive note in our industry is there's more companies now than ever that are treating their folks better than ever, and it is more reciprocal. We've definitely elevated, in my opinion, being in this a while. And I think a lot of that has to do with, we don't have an endless labor supply. We know that. So you have to adapt in the way you get people to come in and stay with you, as long as, like your company has, is you have to treat them right, but it's a two-way street. You get what has to get done in a day, and you get treated very well. And I think that is a great message to get out there. Very well put.
Yeah. It's definitely a two-way street, and it just builds, so when somebody gets to be able to see all the great work that they've done over the years, and see the steeples and the beautiful, like the governor's mansion roof and things like that, and they go by and they're like, I did that, I helped put that on.
Yep.
There's a lot of pride in that, and so there's a lot of sense of accomplishment.
I agree.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with roofmapping.com, is being able to put that on a permanent interactive map, so they don't necessarily have to drive by, but they can say, well, these are the roofs that I've been involved in. These were the slates that I did. This was my metal work with a close-up photo. So it's taking all of that pride and passion and putting it onto an interactive platform so that everybody can see their work. Not that other competitors will come and steal your workforce, but they could be proud and say, well, actually, I did this one. I did this award-winning church 15 years ago, and look how beautiful it still looks. It's taking all of that information that's out there, spread all over the sort of internet, but bringing it all into one place. And that's why, we have two of your roofs on the map, St. Andrews,
cool.
And also the Norwegian Embassy. Fantastic work. But yeah, we'd love to get more, and let's get your whole back catalogue so that everybody can see the types of roofs that you've done in the past.
John would fill the globe up.
Well, yeah, let's do it. Because if someone has a prestige building and they don't know who to contact, and they see the other prestige buildings that you've already done, then they know, okay, well, I can trust these guys because they've done similar to what I've got. And that's what we're trying to do, matching clients to contractors who can do the work well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that was another job that was very, very challenging for a number of reasons. The Norwegian Embassy was a job where we did pre-patinaed copper, and the surface was round, and they went double lock standing seam, and it was such a tight job site that I kidded to one of our guys. I said, yeah, it's kind of like trying to bathe an elephant in a shoebox. It's like let's put one foot in, and then because it was such a tight spot for so many contractors, and I want to say the liquidated damages on that job was $5,000 a day. So it was really high. And then it was also right across the street from the vice president's house. So cell service was basically impossible. So if you needed to contact the office or whatever, you actually had to walk about 2 blocks away just to use the phone. And so, yeah, another reason why that was really difficult was a lot of times when you get to a building, the curve isn't perfect. So if the curve isn't perfect, it's going to telegraph right through to your copper, and your copper is going to look all wonky and out of shape. So we basically said, hey, we're going to have to do all the woodwork, because if somebody else puts on the woodwork, it's going to make our copper look awful. Yeah. So, yeah, we had to kerf cut all of the wood, basically put grooves into it all, and we bent around the curves. And when we put it on, we also used European folds. So the standing seam where it goes up and it changes pitch, we actually folded it all so that we didn't have to solder anything. So the reason why we did it there is that if you look at it, everybody sees that beautiful front, and the copper comes pre-patinaed. So if you were to cut and solder, you would have to wire wheel all of that off, acid wash it, and then solder it, and then somehow try and get that patina back on and look uniform. But also you'd have to make sure that none of the acid or anything ran down the face. So it's really like an impossible job to cut and solder how it was originally specified. So we went in and we're like, okay, number one, you can't cut and solder here. Number two, you can't have your carpenters put that wood on because it's going to make our copper look awful. And, you know, that's the worst thing when you get to a job site and the carpentry is in such shape that you're like, we can't do this. We can't do it and make it look right. And a lot of times you can cheat it, you know, like I was on a slate turret once where it was wildly out of whack. So the center wasn't actually in the center, and then you had flat spots. But on a turret, you can cheat every single slate by the amount that it's off. So if you cheat it, even though it's way off, it looks perfect. You know, when you look up at the turret, you would never know that the wood is off because every single slate is cut to that exact amount that it's off. So it looks straight even though it's not. But when it's copper and the wood's off, it all telegraphs through the copper, meaning you'll have lines in the copper, it'll get twisted, and when copper expands and contracts, it's going to, you know, make it even worse. It's going to magnify it to the nth degree.
No, it makes total sense. And it's there was a good example there. Project you went in had a lot of tough conditions, and you came up with the right solutions for it. That's great. Andy, any other questions before I kick it over to John for closing?
No, I was just going to say, you know, we just want to show the great work that you guys do. And it was interesting you talking about the Norwegian, because I've looked at the photos, and we have the photo for the Norwegian Embassy on the website, but the photo doesn't tell that whole backstory of your expertise of knowing that you can't cut or saw and all of that. And I was just thinking as you were talking, you know, was the general contractor just thinking, oh, he's saying he's got to do his own carpentry just so he's getting a bit more work? Or do they understand that actually this guy has the experience and we need to listen to him? Do you ever sort of come across that conflict?
Yeah, so there was a conflict, but, you know, basically we explained to them what would occur. And when they saw that's the potential of what could occur and the timeline issue, because they were under the crunch too. That's why our liquidated damages were so steep. Every contractor there had super steep liquidated damages, meaning that if you didn't finish your part of the project on an exact date, you're going to have to pay per day. Yeah. And like I said, it's $5,000 a day. So if you miss, you're in for a world of hurt. So that's one of those projects where you have to plan it out exactly. And that's another place where a lot of people miss the boat. They think that if you have the roofing skill, that's the cat's meow. One of the most difficult problems is actually scheduling and making sure that everything fits together just perfect. So, like, you know, when we did that copper steeple in Iowa, the winning IFD project, everything had to go like clockwork. So each part had to be torn off in a certain sequence in the exact time and sent off to be made. And all that had to be made and sent back to the job site in exact time, because that project had an 8-month window. And if anything misses, you're done for, because you're going to hit the Iowa winter. And being 250 feet up in the air, that's going to be really, really rough. So, you know, those are the kinds of jobs that we really like, because it's not just the skill, but it's the skill as well as the planning. And those are the really interesting jobs that we love to do, because it's just not a job for anyone.
Great. So, John, is there any closing statements or anything you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap it up for today?
Well, not really. I think that I'm really proud of a lot of the achievements that our team has produced, and that's the critical thing. It's a team effort, so it's from the estimator to the planner to the material purchaser to the installer, and yeah, we're always looking for interesting projects to do, and we're always looking for great people to join the team. So if anybody out there hears and would love to be a part of this team or has a really interesting project that they'd like us to tackle, we'd love to do it.
Great. All right. Well, it was a pleasure having you on here today, John. And for the audience, I can tell you it's a pleasure having Andrew over here for a live event. Enjoyed the day. So that being said, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and we will catch you on next month's episode.
Great talking to you guys.